Are there ever circumstances where it would make sense to send commons, unlimited, or modern cards to PSA or Beckett to be graded? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the Parkside Merchant channel. I'm going to skip through all that front matter about subscriptions and comments and likes and stuff. Do that if you feel interested. Let's get straight down to the question in today's video, which is, does it ever actually make sense for people to submit their commons, their unlimited Yu-Gi-Oh cards, or even modern cards to PSA or Beckett to get graded? Now, you'll commonly hear from a lot of folks, and I've talked about this on my channel as well, that it makes sense to prioritize first edition cards, especially vintage era cards, particularly from those older sets, the first 11 sets being LOB through Ancient Sanctuary. Those are the things that are basically the original vintage Yu-Gi-Oh era. There's always going to be a market for it, and it's a lot harder to get burned when you have first edition really vintage stuff that grades high than experimenting with other categories or other types of cards. So generally, I do agree that you should typically try to buy vintage, buy first edition, and keep it to some of those really OG original sets and releases, right? That's the stuff where there's always going to be some interest and appetite because it's really old and it's from the original kind of first seasons of the original series, and so there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of historical significance to most of those cards and products. However, I do believe there may be circumstances where grading or even buying some of the other stuff can actually sometimes make sense from both an investment or a collector's perspective. What I want to say right off the top is that people should just grade whatever you want to grade, right? If there's cards that you have a certain level of affinity toward, or you want to have it slabbed to protect it or keep it safe, even if you don't think it's going to grade something very high, circumstantially, it may be appropriate to grade whatever card you want, right? I've done a video on my channel about my first Yu-Gi-Oh card that I still have. It wouldn't even grade a PSA 1, right? It would be in damaged beyond gradability potential, right? It's in absolutely terrible condition. But it's something I may one day choose to slab just because I know it's the first card I ever had, and I might want to just keep it safe in a slab just as a keepsake, right? There's different people that have different reasons to grade things. So this is going to be more from a strategic collector or investor perspective, how you might think about what to grade, as opposed to like just the stuff I want to grade because it has a lot of nostalgia value, not because I'm really looking to build out a collection of this stuff or flip it or sell it or whatever down the road. So let's start first of all with unlimited cards. So cards that don't have the first edition stamp, that just get reprinted. This is the kind of stuff that can get reprinted any day, right? You can go to those Walmart grab bag boxes or the mystery boxes, sometimes pull unlimited stuff out of those things that's pre-slabbed, right? There's all kinds of things available in the market for the unlimited cards. What is kind of interesting, if you look at eBay's sold listings, there are people that sometimes pay several $100s in auctions and buy it now for unlimited cards that grade a PSA 10, especially the secret rares from those first 11 sets. So what I would say typically, and this is my opinion, but when it comes to unlimited cards, if you're sitting on, especially secret rares, ultra rares, and you think it can grade a 10, you may as well send it out because there's a decent chance that somebody out there in the market may be willing to pay quite a bit of money for those cards. The other thing I should add to this as well is that for most of those starter decks, so starter deck Yugi, starter deck Kaiba, and then to a lesser extent, the Pegasus and Joey starter decks from that era. A lot of those are unlimited, right? The first edition runs, I think, for the starter deck Yugi and starter deck Kaiba, the original ones, were pretty short. So sometimes, for a lot of collectors, just the unlimited starter deck Kaiba Blue Eyes, whether it grades a 9 or a 10, that's still worth quite a bit of money because those starter decks haven't been reprinted, I think, a ton over the years, but maybe not at all, I think, for some of them. I know there is the starter deck Kaiba Evolution, starter deck Yugi Evolution. Those are different decks that have a different code and even different artwork on the cards themselves. So frankly, if you're sitting on like a starter deck Joey, Red Eyes, or you've got a Dark Magician from Starter Deck Yugi and they're unlimited, and they look really crisp and really clean, could swing a 9 or a 10, you may as well send it to PSA, because I think those two are also often commanding several $100s in auctions or buy it now. So moral of the story, unlimited is not always a terrible idea. You just have to be thoughtful about what card it is and try to stick to the secret rares, ultra rares. Don't go grading unlimited commons, right, and unlimited stuff that's modern. That's obviously probably not going to be a smart move, but there is a market on eBay for very high power grades from the unlimited secret rares and ultra rares from some of those original sets. So next up, let's talk about commons. And before we talk about commons, you have to remember something about commons, whether it's first edition commons and especially unlimited commons. A common is very common, meaning that literally every collector out there that has packs or boxes or binders or whatever from those sets, tins, however they got their raw cards. If you've got a couple of secrets from LOB or from Metal Raiders, then you've got dozens, maybe hundreds of commons, right, that go along with that stuff. So just keep in mind that any common that you try to make a play in from a collection or investment perspective, there's definitely somebody out there that's got a lot of them. Maybe it's not one person, it could be several people, but because the commons are not rares or secret rares or super rares or ultra rares or whatever, right? They're just very common in the boxes and in people's collections. So there's a lot of them out there. So you have to tread very carefully if you're going to try to make a big play in the market for commons. You often hear people say, grading commons, you're burning your money, right? You're throwing money away if you grade a common card. And I think in general, I agree with this, especially if it's an unlimited common, right? That's burning money, tossing it into the dumpster, essentially. But if you have first edition commons, especially if you have short prints, some of the stuff that had very short runs, a lot of the short print cards actually got played a lot because many of the short prints or super short prints were playable cards. A lot of that stuff got destroyed to the extent that certain short print commons from some sets are almost as hard to find today in mint condition as the secret rares or some of the other very high rarity cards from the original sets. So I think what I'm getting at is, depending on the card, make sure it's first edition, and make sure there's like some hook around why it would be interesting. So typically that would be from the first 11 sets, preferably the really original ones or the ones where you see a lot of registry interest. That would be sets like LOB, Metal Raiders. I believe Labyrinth of Nightmare is also generating a lot of buzz, so is Magic Ruler. A lot of collectors are looking to build out those sets in registry format, which means you need every single common, preferably in a 9 or a 10, to try and maximize your registry score. So if you're sitting on like a lot of near mint or mint condition commons from some of these sets, it might make sense to grade some of the short prints or the super short prints if they look like they're in really good condition. So I do think that circumstantially it can be very wise to grade your commons. If they're commons that are first edition, preferably some of the shorter print run stuff or the stuff that was very playable, because you know you've got a bit of a moat around that pop and that somebody's not going to show up with 50 copies of those commons, right? Okay, so the last type of card that we're going to talk about is modern cards. Does it ever make sense to grade modern Yu-Gi-Oh? And in my opinion, the line where people say modern starts varies a lot in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh. So for somebody like me, right, I am a caveman in the Yu-Gi-Oh market. Any card that was printed after like 2004, I don't even know what it is. Like Ancient Sanctuary and even some of the Invasion of Chaos cards that I see sometimes look new to me. Like it all feels very modern. So for certain investors that were really big into Yu-Gi-Oh in 2002, 2003, early 2004, and maybe parts of 2005, anything after that, like the Legendary Collections and all this GX stuff and the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal and basically all the stuff that came after like 2005 might feel modern to some people. So just keep that in mind, that the line for modern depends a lot on what kind of a collector you're talking to. But my general opinion is that the modern stuff is very risky. And I'll concede it's probably riskiest after like 2015, maybe 2010 to 2015. And the reason for that is people started getting smarter about taking care of their cards, right? And the pop reports for some of the PSA 10s, from like a lot of the modern sets and things like that, it's just very likely. Like you hear all these people talking about maximum gold, for example, sending out droves of these maximum gold cards to PSA. I'm telling you folks, like every Dark Magician and every Blue Eyes White Dragon and all those iconic monsters that came out of those maximum gold boxes, that stuff is getting immediately sleeved, it's getting immediately bindered or shipped out to PSA to get slabbed and then put in a box somewhere for safekeeping. So just be real careful with modern. I myself do not grade any modern stuff at all, basically. I think I have one or two exceptions, which you'll see on my channel when we do some PSA returns, but I am a big believer that modern stuff is risky. So I think in the order of risk, right, modern is the most risky stuff to grade. I feel like the unlimited is probably next up in terms of riskiness, depending on what kind of unlimited card you're grading. And the commons are also risky in the sense that there isn't a huge market for them. But for the people that need them for a registry set or something like that, you might be sitting on something that's worth potentially several $100s if it's a PSA 10 and it's a super short print or a short print from some of the sets that people are interested in building out full collections of. So I guess that's all for the video, folks. That's just my take on whether or not it makes sense to grade unlimited, commons, and modern cards. Let me know in the comments, what do you folks think about my assessment? Do you grade your commons? Do you grade your unlimited cards? Do you grade modern stuff? And if so, where do you draw the line for modern? Let me know in the comments. I'll be interested to hear what people have to think. Once again, this is the Parkside Merchant Channel. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.